started here, more fun.
You guys good camera-wise? I can't see you, so just, yes, no? Yes? Cool. Thank you. Well, good morning. Welcome, everyone. My name is Dan Rayburn. I'm the conference chairman. Thanks to Jose and Joel for that video they shot yesterday. I have a couple announcements I'm going to make this morning of what's going to take place over the next 2 days in terms of content. And then I'm going to give a little bit of context of the show. This is actually the 20th year of the Streaming Media Show here in California, so I'm going to talk a little bit about that as well. So first, just a couple announcements. The sessions are going to kick off at 10:30, and the exhibit hall opens at 10 o'clock. So once we're done here with the keynote and the Q&A, just everything is outside today. So we have a total of 6 tracks going on this morning. We have the live streaming summit, which if you go out here and to the left, sort of where you came into the entrance here, that's the live streaming summit. Outside into the first hall on the left, first door here on the left is the discovery track. And if you go out to the right and around the corner, all 4 sessions from Stream Media West are there as well. So everything's in one nice hallway here for everybody. Everything you see today is going to be filmed, so it's going to take us a little bit of time to get all the content online. But if you go to streamingmedia.com/videos, a lot of people don't know that we have a video portal on our website. You can go and see every single presentation from every show we've done. And we have about the last 5 or 6 years archived. So it's a great resource if you're ever looking for information on the types of services and products that vendors offer in the market. You can actually go and see presentations by them. So definitely check that out if you'd like. Lunch today, thanks to Google, is going to be outside. So anybody who was here for the reception last night, it's in the same location as that. It's in the Lighthouse Courtyard. Also, we have in the courtyard again as well at 6 p.m. from 6 to 7:30. We have the Beer Garden Networking event, which is sponsored by IBM. A little change in tomorrow. Tomorrow's keynote session is going to start at 8:30 instead of 9 o'clock, because after that at 9:30 we have the Streaming Media Magazine Reader's Choice Awards. So we'll have an awards ceremony starting at 9:30 as well. For this morning, what we're going to do is we're going to have 2 different speakers. So we're going to have Keith, who's going to come up and do about a 20-minute presentation from AWS Elemental, and then afterwards we're going to do a Q&A here with Keith and Jim from Amazon Sports. We're going to talk about some of the Thursday night football that they've been doing and also some of the other trends that we're seeing in the market. And then finally, also inside the program, you'll see, and on our website, streammedia.com, we have the contact us information. Just so everybody knows, that contact number is my cell phone. So I answer my cell phone 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and we pride ourselves in the fact that we are always available to everybody. So streamingmedia.com is a free resource for anybody who's looking for information on products and services, what's taking place in the market, market sizing, market pricing. My job is basically to help educate the market, inform, educate, and empower. My job here at the show is to play matchmaker as well. So if there's companies or people you're interested in meeting, if you're in a particular segment of the market, maybe it's broadcast or it's enterprise or it's publishing, and you want to meet other like-minded users in your field or your sector of the market, definitely come and find me. I'm happy to go through who's here and who you might be able to meet and connect as many people as possible. So as I mentioned earlier, this is the 20th year of the Stream Media West show. And it's interesting, I was thinking this morning, sort of how do you convey what's taken place in this market over the last 20 years? A lot of people in the market right now in the stream media industry are new. They may have only been in the market 4 or 5 years, and they don't realize really what it took to get where we are today as an industry. So I remember the first show 20 years ago. It was in San Francisco, and there was a small group of us. There weren't a lot of people back then in the industry. It was really just starting off. It was really growing. I was at the show like you as an attendee. I was there with my company as a vendor, exhibiting, and it's amazing to see just how much progress has been made over the last 23 years. The streaming media industry is really 23 years old from one of the first streaming media events ever took place on the internet. And it's amazing how it comes full circle, because back in, let's say, 98, 99, the average bit rate was 80 to 100 kilobits per second. That was considered high quality. 100 kilobits. If you had an ISDN line in your house, you were considered like the cool kid on the block. So we go 20 years later, your average bit rate's about 3.5 megs, 3,500 kilobits per second. So it's amazing just how quickly the video got to be really, really good quality. And yet, 20 years later, when we had Microsoft and Unreal talking about players and talking about the formats and talking about how there was no standard in the market, and that dissolved over time. Here we are 20 years later, and what are we talking about? HEVC, AV1, VP9. Now all of a sudden we're going back to the times in some segments of the market where, again, we have no standards. So one thing that we're always trying to look to do as an industry, I think, and it's what we're trying to do at streamingmedia.com, is just educate people on the market and how the market has evolved. And what you're going to see over the next 2 days in terms of content in the program, we're talking about the entire video workflow. So how do you create, capture, ingest, store, transcode, monetize, protect, track, deliver, playback, QoE, that whole broadcast ecosystem for internet is really what we're going to be covering over the next 2 days. So there's a lot of content in the program. If you're not sure which sessions to go to or which might be best for you, just grab me in the hallway. I'm happy to go through the program and tell you which ones I think are best based on what you're really looking to get out of the show. But it's amazing just to think of how much we've done as an industry over the last 23 years. And personally, I'm excited to see what we do over the next even 5 years, because it's amazing how quickly the technology is now progressing. And we're going to be talking about some of that in our Q&A portion as well today with Jim and Keith. So with that, we're going to jump into Keith's presentation, and then we'll do keynotes and we'll do some questions. So please join me in welcoming Keith Wimes. He's the CMO of AWS Elemental. Keith.
Thanks, Dan. Good morning. Good morning, you guys. Oh, good morning. All right. So I want to thank Dan and Eric and the entire streaming media team. 20 years is a long time, and I know that along that 20 years, there have been a lot of changes in the market. There have been periods of time maybe when the room wasn't as full as this, so I'm glad that streaming media stuck through it and the industry stuck through it, and we're really happy to be here today. I did want to go through a few slides that give context to what we'll be talking about a little bit more in the fireside chat. And in doing that, I think it'll set us up for some context there. I do think that I'll get a little bit into the technology, because I think most of you are technologists. It's a technology audience here. And we'll walk through, I'll talk a little bit about a little background just in terms of where we've been, and I'll focus for the most part on sports, given that the topic is what we're doing with the NFL and Thursday Night Football. But I'll also talk a little bit about the industry in general, and then go through the workflow in quite a bit of detail. We're really fortunate, actually, to be able to go through this level of detail and share this information with you. And I want to thank Jim as well for making the trip from New York to be part of this session. I know that it was in the agenda as Winston Baugh was going to be here. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to be, and he sends his regards. But it's great that we have Jim. We made this change a couple weeks ago, and so it just didn't make the format there. One thing I also wanted to do is acknowledge, as many of you are aware, those of you that are in the streaming industry know that we lost a really good friend and mentor and a visionary in the industry, Sam Blackman. He passed away. He died at the end of August, and he was going to be here doing this presentation. And it's been 2 or 3 months now, and I find it difficult to get up and be thinking about the fact that Sam would have been here. But it's been a lot easier for us in some ways, in that the whole industry, we've had literally thousands of people reach out to us in the days and the weeks and even in the months that followed. And so I just wanted to thank everyone for those of you that did that. It meant a lot to us. We were blown away by the showing of support, and it's helped us get through it. What Sam built was really, really strong, and it shows within the organization that we have, how we're getting through it, but also in terms of just how the industry has reacted. So I know that's a little bit of a downer, but I wanted to acknowledge it because we are very thankful for everyone that did reach out to us, okay? So let me move on to brighter things, I guess. And for those of you that don't know AWS Elemental, we were acquired by Amazon Web Services just 2 years ago now, a little over 2 years ago. And we had a vision for the industry about connecting the content that broadcasters and governments and enterprises have, connecting those to the viewers. And this was our vision for the industry. We wanted to make this a very simple thing to do in a very complex environment. And it was really Sam's vision to do this at scale, right? And part of what we're going to talk about today is the ability for us to do very high quality video at scale and how the cloud really plays into that, okay? So we'll go through that. What we're seeing with customers in terms of live video needs, Dan touched on it a little bit in his opening remarks, but really you have the need for reliable sources, you have the need for having very high quality in the core of the architecture, and we'll walk through the architecture in a lot of detail here, making sure that you have maximum uptime, maximum distribution so that you can monetize. And this particular use case is a really unique example in terms of the scale that we're dealing with here. And so we'll talk, Jim and I will discuss, for instance, the number of countries that we deliver to, the number of viewers that we're getting, within a few weeks of the launch of this service, and making sure that you have that uptime. It's critical. The user experience, the viewer's experience at this point in the industry now, 20 years on, it has to be as good or better than the broadcast experience for those viewers. And so we're going to show you some things that we're doing to make that happen. And then there's always the solid economic return. These are the needs that all video providers have. They need to find a way to make money off of this capability, and we address each of these three things, and I'll talk about it in the technical workflow, which is a little deeper than a typical keynote, but I wanted to set the context so that when we get into the fireside chat, we're all on the same page. So what are we doing at the sources? We're coping with a lot of variability. There's variability in the timing of the sources. There's variability in the geographic location of those sources. There's variability just in the typical video ingest. I was talking to somebody earlier just about the fact that years ago there were all these issues with frame sync on a typical live ingest. You need to have that capability to deal with the resilience. There are things that happen like weather. There are things that happen like some jitter and these types of situations where you have to have a very resilient capability, and I'll describe how we do some of that. In terms of building for maximum reliability and scale, this is the heart of what we're able to do. One of the biggest challenges I would say that we had as an independent entity was not the fact that it was not translating content into lots of different versions. We were very good at that, but getting to the level of scale that's required to have a truly global service offering, especially in the sports world where viewers are very quick to switch if they're not getting the experience that they want. We have to build that into the redundancy, into the uptime of the service. We have to have the monitoring capabilities to be able to react to things that naturally happen, and so we'll talk about that. And then I do want to cover as well some of the unique things that we're doing in terms of monetization. And so we'll talk about how we're utilizing more targeted server-side ad insertion, how we're increasing the capabilities of tracking and making sure that the viewer experience is very much a seamless one for those customers that are receiving this video. So a lot of folks, we've been involved in the sports world for quite a long time. We were doing the Pan American Games in 2011 as an independent entity. We were doing the Olympics in London. We were doing the Sochi Games, as well as the games in Brazil in 2016. And along the way, we were doing things like the World Cup and whatnot. But as we got into this world of Amazon Video, we started out with things that maybe are a little bit easier or a little bit less risky. And so one of the first things that we started to do were more, let's call them more simple live events. So we were doing things like concerts, we were doing conventions, things that would last for a few hours. Viewership was was quite high, but not in the order of magnitude that we would see in an NFL event. And we started this work 2 years ago, basically a little bit even before the time of the acquisition, and worked through a lot of the challenges that you would have in delivering live events at scale where the source content is going immediately into the cloud and then not returning to the ground. It's going basically directly to the consumers end to end. And I think we did a pretty good job. I don't want to... Is Dan still here? Is Dan still here? Oh, good, he's not. So really smart people liked what we were doing, right? Dan had this comment that he tweeted back when we were doing the live concert with Macklemore, and we did a pretty good job with that. And Amazon Video did an amazing job getting all of the components, and we'll talk through what those are. And then we moved on to what's essentially a more complex situation. So Amazon Channels is a program that allows you to have access not only to clips and files and the on-demand portion of services like Starz and Showtime, and to be able to watch those at any point in time, but also to get access to the broadcast feed. This was originally called the Streaming Partners Program. And basically, as an Amazon Prime subscriber, you can get access to, for a monthly fee, get access to Starz and Showtime, as well as HBO with all that entails, all the different genres. And if you have an urgent desire to have a replica, basically, of your broadcast service, of your cable subscription service, you can get it for those channels. And they've recently added Discovery as another example of a channel that's on there. And now there are dozens of channels that are basically playing out live 24/7, as well as a video on demand type of offering within the Prime subscription service. So this is all about experience for the consumer, and so this is about access. Consumers want access to content. We all know in the industry, the traditional way of doing things is a little bit more, I'll call it a little bit more closed. There's lots of discussions about a la carte and skinny bundles, and all of those trends are targeted towards giving users an experience that they would want for their video. And then there's ways to enhance that experience with other applications, with other advanced features and functionality that integrate both data, intelligence, and the player technology. And so you can see here, as an example, in an episodic content with Transparent, you have the ability to utilize the Amazon X-Ray service to see more detail about whatever show is playing. So in this case, there's an audio track, some music that's playing within this episode, and you can get some more detail on that by clicking through into that experience. Or you can get more detail on the different actors that are playing within the character set of that particular episode. That's a good experience for users. They can choose to have it or not. They can choose to dive into it or not. You don't have to go to a separate phone, to search out what is that song. You don't have to use Shazam in this case, for an audio. You can get that experience right within the context of the content that you're consuming. And so now, leading up into Thursday Night Football, I want to play a real brief audio clip or video clip. It's about 30 seconds, and then I'll get into the architecture that we're doing in order to develop, to deliver these Thursday Night Football games.
Makes the catch! Touchdown! Just ripped it right up the middle.
I'm back like I never left. Another sprint, another step.
Breeze fires down the middle of the field.
I made it through the darkest part of night.
Touchdown!
Never see the sunrise. Now I feel glorious, glorious. I feel glorious, glorious.
So what do we think the cloud brings to this? The first thing is agility and speed. All video providers, regardless of who they are dealing with competition. They need to react, and they can't be in a situation where they're investing every 5 or 10 years in infrastructure, trying things out, deciding it didn't work, writing off all the CapEx. You need to have speed of innovation. The cloud can deliver that and can reduce the time to market on experimentation that's done. It also delivers the ability to match the expense to the actual revenue stream. So as things start to build up and success starts to take off, you're matching that stream, and it's all pay as you go. You don't have to guess the capacity. You don't have to know. We have the best data scientists in the world at Amazon. They're able to predict, number of viewers that are likely to watch a streaming event, but it's never exactly accurate. And that's true in most cases in terms of video. It's a very hit-driven industry. You never know what the next cat video is going to be. And so being able to handle that unpredictable demand is another value proposition for the cloud. The economies of scale, we're going to talk a little bit about scale here. The scale within Amazon and the speed at which things are moving, launching 1,000 new features and services a year within the AWS world. We have 14 regional locations, 14 regions, and 44 availability zones within that, and plans to continue to accelerate that. And with that comes economies of scale. We're able to do things based on the needs of millions of customers that are billing with us every month. That is a challenge, really, for most businesses. And this ability to go global in minutes, and we'll talk about it in the case of football. Football is very much a US-centric sport, and yet there is demand for it all over the world. More than 180 countries, actually, in the first 4 games have watched this service. And so here's the workflow. I'm going to go through this pretty quickly. I'm going to build it up over time. Some of it is hidden to the right, and you'll just see it as I build it. Source content. We are bringing source content into the Amazon AWS cloud via redundant resources. We take typical inputs. It could be RTP with forward error correction on it. It could be RTMP. It could be transport streams or HLS. And we're doing this in a highly redundant manner. So in order to make sure that we have 100% uptime, we want to make sure that the sources are fully protected. And so we will take feeds in varying geographies, like literally on different coasts. And within those, we'll actually have redundancy within the systems as well. And we'll provide ingest logic that goes into the core processing capabilities. One of the big things that we've learned through the course of projects like this is how to scale. Scaling is different for encoding versus things you're doing around packaging and protection, as well as advertising. And that ability to scale at different rates, depending on the service load, is really important. You can scale encoding based on number of channels, and yet your packager has to be able to react to requests that are coming in based on viewer demand. And we've gotten really good at having that level of flexibility within our systems. Ad insertion and monetization. So in this diagram, anything that's gray is actually basically software that's developed by the Amazon Video technical team. They reside within a different business unit from us within the AWS world. And they very much are our customers. So this is a very typical customer scenario where we'll take the core pipeline and we'll provide all that underlying infrastructure capability, and then the customer will innovate on top of that. In many cases, with our other customers, these might be third-party solutions. So in the case of the ad side of things, it'll be ad server technology or ad decisioning technology. Amazon Video will build a lot of that capability themselves because they choose to do that. And in this area, we're doing a lot around being able to target ads and use server-side ad insertion at scale. So client-side ad insertion has challenges. They can be blocked. The ads themselves can be different in terms of profile or bit rate or quality levels. When we're using server-side ad insertion, and particularly our technology, we're making sure that every viewer is getting the same experience as the core content, and making sure that that's completely seamless and targeted at a level that's appropriate for them. So we won't necessarily do it for every individual. That just doesn't make sense, but there are profiles of people. There might be 20, 30, 40 different profiles to make sure that it's very targeted to them. And over the course of time, this will become better and better with things like machine learning and AI. Getting the delivery all the way to the endpoint requires a lot of CDN technology. We have our own. It's Amazon CloudFront. We also utilize, Amazon Video utilizes a lot of different CDNs in order to make sure that delivery is seamless and that it can get everywhere globally. The player is developed within Amazon Video. And the thing that ties it all together is really the management capabilities. So end-to-end monitoring, being able to have the content protected using third-party scrambling and DRM technologies, making sure that the system is working end-to-end, that the intelligence is there to be able to react to changes and externalities that occur. This is all part of the solution. And so, again, you might see a scenario here where you have optimization systems in the lower right there. I don't know where the laser went. It's not showing up on the screen for some reason. Anyway, that's built within the Amazon Video technical team, but that could just as easily be a third-party solution, companies that are probably in the room and that you're all familiar with. And so in the end, all of these services are based on AWS console capabilities that are there and available for anyone that has an AWS account. The technologies are basically built on top of that and then use it to deliver the services. And in the end, you get a really complex diagram that shows the end-to-end workflow, shows the ability to create massive scaled live events for distribution to millions of viewers, and making sure that you have a viewer experience that is at par or better than broadcast. And that's really what we've been focused on, I would say, over the last number of months that we've been working on making sure that this has gone well. This has been, I think we're, 4 or 5 weeks into 5 games we've done. Some of this data is maybe a little bit old, but in the first 4 games, there were over 7 million viewers, 187 countries. Viewers in 187 countries were able to view the content, 600 devices. And the average viewer is staying engaged. 51 minutes for a live sports stream is actually quite a long time. It's not the entire game. People are using it in their particular situations. They may be on the go watching part of the game and then watch the rest of it on a TV set. But 51 minutes is actually quite high for an average. There's a lot of people that are tuning in just to check it out, and there are a lot of people that are watching the entire game. And we really view this as a continuous improvement project. And I would encourage any of you that haven't seen it, that haven't seen the streams. We were talking earlier with someone who happened to be shopping a couple weeks ago on a Thursday night and going on to Amazon, and immediately they just clicked on it and they're like, oh wow, that was really super simple. It was literally one click out of their experience to get to live content. And so I would invite all of you, if you haven't, there's 5 or 6 games left. Every Thursday night, you'll be able to see those. The next one is, I guess, next Thursday when the Seahawks battle the Cardinals. And I'd like to thank you for your attention, and we'll have Jim and Dan come up, and we'll do a little bit of a fireside chat here. Thank you.
Which one do you want? Where do you want to put Jim? Put him in
I think put Jim in the middle.
Right, sure. Oh, good. Thank you.
Oh, I have Eric's name on there, so sorry about that.
Oh, that's okay. Last minute, Eric couldn't do it, losing his voice a little bit, so I'm going to fill in. Jim, I want to jump right to you.
Sure.
Just give a little bit of background, if you can, in terms of what you do, since you're more on the business side and you're on the sports side of Amazon. Maybe just entail, what your job is, because it's very different from a technical standpoint.
Very different. So Jim V Lorenzo, I head up I'm head of sports for Amazon Video. And what that means is that my job is to go out and look to acquire live sports that we can put onto Amazon Video for our customers. So in many respects, I have the easier job, as a lot of the engineers remind me all the time, because I go out and I get the content, and then I can sit back and watch them have the hard job of trying to make sure that it looks great when people are accessing it on Amazon.
So since you're focused on the business side, One thing we probably want to hear, because I don't really think you guys have ever talked about it before, is just when Amazon wanted to get in the business of sharing live video, being a broadcast destination for that, why did you pick the NFL? I mean, there's so many different sports leagues you could do.
Yeah, definitely.
There's also other live content that's not sports related. What was the NFL? What was the draw there?
So the way that we look at things, and this is not just sports related or video, it's really for all of Amazon, and kind of what we base our company on is working backwards from the customer. So when you look at the NFL, obviously it's really high demand content, not just in the US, but as we were talking about internationally as well. And because Amazon is a global video service, for us to be able to find content that we knew was going to be compelling to a large number of the customers who are on Amazon Video, we felt that would be a really great benefit for our Prime members. And that's really what we were looking at when we decided to try and acquire that content.
And how much of that is based on your demographics? Are you looking at the demographics of who your Prime members are, age, male, female, and then figuring out what type of content they want to watch? How much of it is data driven? I mean, Amazon obviously has an amazing amount of data of what we're buying and looking at.
Yeah, I mean, look, I can't get too much in the specifics as to the specific data we're looking at, but of course we're looking at how people are consuming content on Amazon. We're looking at how people are consuming the content off of Amazon. With something like live sports, we obviously have to look to see what is the demand profile for that particular set of sports rights to see, to again make sure that when we put it onto Amazon, we want to try and find things that are going to be compelling to our customers. And that's one of the nice things about working with the NFL is that it's such a large property, and there is so much demand for NFL games, including the Thursday Night Football games, that's why one of the reasons why we were really excited that we were able to acquire that content.
Yeah, I think there was a report that came out a couple of weeks ago that actually had NFL content. Outside of broadcast, it's the most streamed, live sports content. So when you're looking at other devices, essentially, I think Adobe, and there was another company that did that, is like number one.
Not surprising. I mean, it's
Yeah.
the NFL, the league
Yeah.
besides the NFL. Obviously, they're having viewership problems on TV, which benefits you guys because people are going online to watch more content, so that's certainly good for you. Talking about, okay, so that's the business in terms of that's why you wanted the content, but then how do you judge the success that Amazon has in terms of licensing that? So I know you're not going to get into numbers of what you paid and what the model looks like, but how much of taking content like that for Amazon is about brandness and awareness of Amazon in terms of other products and services you obviously sell and generating revenue from Prime versus the advertising? Because you talked about server-side ad insertion. So how big is the monetization strategy as opposed to the branding aspect of it?
Yeah, it's really just the other side of the coin of what I was mentioning as to why we looked at the NFL content initially. So we had, we're looking for content that we believe is going to have strong customer demand and that our Amazon Prime members are going to really love. We then, when we put that content onto Amazon, we're really then looking to see what's the feedback from our customers for that content. So, when you look at the numbers that we were talking about, we're really pleased with the viewership so far. That's just one component of it, one thing that we look at. But year over year, the numbers are looking really solid. And again, we're just starting out. We're only 5 games in, but we're pleased with those. Not just the number of people overall who are watching, but the engagement. And that 51-minute number, I think that is key because one of the things we're seeing is that people are watching on not just mobile devices, but on living room as well, whether it's Fire TV or some of the other living room devices where you can access Amazon Video. And for us, that's important because it really shows engagement. And that's something that is important to rights holders. And for us, it shows that our customers are really are enjoying watching the content. But we really it's really just the other side of the coin where for us, success is when our customers find that content appealing. And when you look at some of the user feedback that we've received, whether it's on the quality of the stream, which has been amazing, or even things like the alternate audio tracks that we're offering, where you can actually watch a game with either in Spanish, Brazilian Portuguese, or with a team of UK broadcasters, which is sort of like watching a Premier League game, but watching the NFL. And I encourage everyone to watch with them as well. It's a lot of fun, and we've gotten a lot of really positive feedback from that.
So where do you see advertising going then? with this in terms of how important that is?
Well, I mean, it's certainly a factor. I mean, the nice thing for us is that we do have, as part of the rights that we acquired, we do have the ability to sell against a portion of the advertising avails that are there. And for us, that is something that is appealing because we think, and this is where really, it should bring in some of the people on our advertising side, but we do think that Amazon has a compelling offering for not just our customers, but also our advertising partners as well. And getting into live sports and seeing that engagement, I think that's something that people have been really pleased with.
Keith, I want to talk a little bit about latency. Lately, it seems latency has become a bigger issue in the market. We have a lot of solutions out there talking about QoE, quality of experience for the consumer. We have new products and services coming out from different vendors in the market. And whenever it comes to live streaming sports online, you'll see a lot of comments on Twitter and other places where people say the feed is 20 seconds behind or 25 seconds behind. And obviously, the way the internet works and the compression and there adds a latency there. And then you hear about WebRTC, people talking about maybe that'll do something on the latency side. How important with sporting events is the latency aspect? And where do you think consumers are in terms of how much latency they'll allow before it really impacts the engagement?
Yeah. Some of that is born of the early days of just streaming technology and the length of the segments, and the inherent delays there. What we've been able to do in the NFL case, and I encourage everyone to go and take a look at it. It really depends on the device and the particular streaming protocol that occurs, but we have feedback where there are actually times when it's ahead of the broadcast. By using a combination of the intelligence of how Amazon Video as a fully integrated solution works, as well as the fact that we can now really make a decision to reduce chunks and maybe go a little bit outside of a typical scenario to reduce that latency down. This focus on the customer and the viewer and making sure that the experience is as positive as possible is a combination of making sure the stream doesn't buffer, making sure that the quality of the video and the ads are fairly seamless and robust, and that latency doesn't have as big an impact as it used to. It is actually coming down, and particularly in apartment and kind of MDU environments, that's where a lot of people have concerns. And being focused on the experience and not so much the bells and whistles has allowed this service to actually make pretty big strides, I would say, in this area. I mean, you've got specific examples.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we've seen some really positive customer feedback on just how short the latency is, and I think the fact that we, for some devices, have been ahead of the cable broadcast has been really surprising, and these guys explained to me how that was even possible. It seems like some kind of break in the space-time continuum that we could make that work, but that's key. I mean, taking a step back as a sports fan, it's impossible to unplug, right, at this point when you're watching a game. You're going to be getting text messages and alerts and everything else. So if I'm watching on one of the living room devices where we offer Amazon Video, I do not want to get an alert or a text message from one of my friends talking about the game if I'm actually behind that game, right? So latency is important, and it's something that I know these guys really put a big focus on, and the engineering team up in Seattle as well. So it's been really nice to see just how short that latency has been.
And what do you think the numbers are in terms of where they have to be both on a latency standpoint and a frustration time, startup time? Is it 1 second? Is it sub 1 second on startup? I mean, I was seeing your streams primarily load at between 1 and 1.5 seconds, somewhere in there. So certainly acceptable.
I think that's reasonable. I mean, I think it depends on the person. It depends on the environment they're in. It depends in some ways on the device that they're in. I don't think there's one answer to it. I think in the industry, we have this thing that I think extends from the video eyes, right? So video eyes for compression folks, they can see artifacting and see issues, and those of us that are in the industry pay very, very, very close attention to all of these different dimensions. And users care, but it's not at the same level. That's something that I've learned over the 20 years. When I'm looking at video and I'm looking at it and going, oh, that's just terrible. When I'm standing next to somebody that has no experience in video compression, they don't see any of it. It's really,
it's true.
It's bizarre, right? It's like,
but we live
you're
that
afflicted.
industry.
You're afflicted. Yeah, that's why a lot of our core compressionists don't own TV sets.
You don't want them to.
Because it's just torture for them at home. Yeah.
I'm thinking about, you're talking about compression and latency and some of those things. How hard is it for Amazon and just also for others in the market, obviously, and plenty of people in the room could probably answer this in their own way, but we're 23 years in now. We have no standard bitrate format, aspect ratio, codec, player, protocol. Maybe in the protocol side, everything's moving to HTTP. We were pretty good on the codec side going HEVC, but now that's sort of up for debate. But everything else, there's no standard. There's no standard metadata. This industry has never defaulted to a standard because Apple, Google, Microsoft, all these guys have never gotten together to play. How much harder does it make your job to deliver something like NFL when you have to deliver to so many devices with so many different renditions, with so many different packaging, with at least, 3 different DRMs? Like,
Yeah.
what could be done to make
Not to
that
mention
simpler?
like accessibility options,
Accessibility,
captioning, and how do you
captioning.
put those into different devices? At the core of the technology problem that we were trying to address as an independent company, and also bringing that to Amazon Web Services, that's the core of it. The core of it is that this industry is innovating so quickly and is no longer willing to have these 10-year cycles of, okay, a standard occurs, everyone spends some time, fragmenting it, bringing it back together again. We all decide, okay, MPEG-2 with, transport streams is the answer for broadcast. Folks aren't willing to do that anymore, and so that fragmentation of codec and packaging and streaming technologies, as well as the DRM and all the accessibility options, is what made software at the core necessary for the market over the last 10 years. We were one of the first, I think, there were software players before us, but we identified that combination of having to create many renditions and the different permutations of that rendition really early, and becoming really good at that by being intimate with customers and talking to them about what their specific needs were in market. It was what made us a better company, and what we bring to the table in terms of the innovation that we have, right? It's this deep video expertise combined with the scale of Amazon and Amazon Web Services that makes this possible.
Well, I always thought of Elemental as a software company from day one. The
We
fact
were,
that you tied
yeah.
it to hardware,
We hit
you
it.
sort of had to, but you were. I mean, you were a software company.
Yeah.
Even though people threw you in the same bucket as a hardware vendor, I think most people who tracked you in the market knew software was the heart of who you were.
Yeah.
Was really the key. We've taken a couple questions from the audience. Jose has them in the back there. Jose, why don't you throw them out and just let us know who they're directed to.
Sure. So I've got first question here is for Keith. Some of the technical elements of the service that you've implemented that make it a truly better experience for the viewers. I know we talked a little bit earlier about just opening the browser and it popped up. What are some of those unique things that you've done that make it a better viewing experience?
Yeah, so I think we talked about that. We talked a little bit about the latency and making sure that the quality was there. One of the things I touched on a little bit in the presentation, and Dan mentioned, was just the ad insertion technology. And one of the things that gets challenging when you really try to target advertising and you're doing it server side, things like the manifest, which isn't necessarily a cacheable type of data set, it starts to get quite out of control, and you have to scale up based on the number of viewers when you're doing that targeting technology, and then scale it back down. And so we basically use an underlying service for that. It's a NoSQL database called DynamoDB that helps us deal with that massive scaling that can occur and then drop back down when you have no idea what the demand is. So if tomorrow I'll take it away from NFL. Let's just say we did the World Series last night, which we didn't do. We have no idea how many viewers there are going to be. That same technology could have scaled up for that in an instance. And being able to handle those situations because of the underlying AWS services is what creates a very differentiated service in the end for the viewer.
Jose, before you go to another, I want to follow up on that. Many live events in this industry have failed over the last even 3 or 4 years. And I think it's interesting that the moment a live event fails or doesn't work for a consumer, the first thing that they want to do is either blame their ISP or blame the content delivery network or the infrastructure that was delivering it. But many times these events, like we saw with HBO Game of Thrones, you couldn't even get to the video. It wasn't a video problem, you couldn't get the video. You weren't authenticated, the database didn't work, the website had an issue. So how do you make sure that all these different components work? Because the moment one thing breaks, like just authentication, it doesn't matter all the infrastructure that's put in place for delivery.
Yeah.
So live events, because you got one shot only to do it, and it's much different than we did events 20 years ago. How do you put a process in place so all that works perfectly together?
Yeah, I mean, the way that Amazon Video has done it, I can't get into too much detail because I don't know it, but the end-to-end monitoring service is, again, it's utilizing underlying AWS services that everyone has access to. So being able to see, at least from the ingest point all the way through to the player with different technologies like CloudWatch and CloudTrail and notification services like SNS that are all in the AWS console, and building technologies on top of that allow for that, basically those different points to give you data on where the issue is. And in the end, it's the brand that's delivering that service.
That's right.
There's always finger pointing, but I think companies like Amazon Video take responsibility for whatever happens, and that's why we did so many trials and made sure that we had, I talked about kind of the building up of 2 years to get to this point, and then even with the sports trial, we did trials all summer before this was happening.
Yeah, and there's still curveballs, right? Our first game, Bears-Packers, there was a lightning delay. How often does that happen, right, for an NFL game? A game a couple weeks ago, there were a couple penalties, flags that were thrown when time had actually already run out. So we went into sort of this pseudo overtime, not overtime space. So even beyond sort of the technical aspects, there's the content, which throws in variables that you have to be able to prepare for.
The human element.
Yeah.
You can only automate so much. It's a live event. I remember the live event days in the late 90s. You could prepare for as much as you could, and then after that, you basically pray that it worked. Jose?
Yeah, we've got another question. This one's for you, Jim. When you look out a year, 2 years down the road, what do you think will look different about this landscape for Amazon customers?
The live sports landscape?
Yeah. I know we're only 5 games in, but but we look out over the next year or two. What's going to look different for customers in their viewing experience?
Yeah, look, it's a little early for us, right? We're really still learning a ton with each game, and we are only 5 games in. But it is nice to see, like I said, I'm going to be repeating myself a little bit here, but some of the engagement we've seen, that's been really helpful and instructive for us. Seeing how people are engaging with some of these alternative audio tracks, that's been helpful for us. Seeing how there's been engagement globally, right, not just in the U.S., has been really helpful. And as we start to extend that out, you can imagine some other stuff that we start using with maybe it's X-ray or other features that are already part of Amazon Video that we could start bringing into the live sports space as well.
Great. Talk a little bit about mobile too. I know we looked at some of the numbers and things, and I know you can't get into a ton of detail about it, but I'm curious to know more about the difference between people watching it on Fire TV versus laptop and mobile especially. I'm curious to know what's going on that side.
Yeah, it's a good question. We see engagement across both platforms, right? I think that one of the things that is really nice for our customers is we are giving them the freedom and the flexibility to decide how they want to watch the game, right? And people say, I think naturally just think of, I'm going to use that. Somebody would use their mobile device maybe if they're standing in line or they're on a commute or whatever it might be, but they may actually be in their house, but somebody else in their family may be using the TV they want to watch, so they have to watch on their mobile device, right? So there's a lot of different use cases, and for us, it's nice for, we want to be able to provide our customers that flexibility to be able to go back and forth. And some of them, honestly, there's a number of people who don't have access to cable. So for the people who are cord cutters, we're giving them not just the mobile convenience, but also a way to watch on a larger screen TV.
Let's actually talk about cord cutting for a moment. If we look at the 5 live linear services out there today, well, maybe not live linear, but 5 services, PlayStation Vue, Hulu, YouTube, AT&T, Sling, combined by the end of this year, they're going to have about 3 million subs total. So it's obviously a small number when you look at total number of cable TV households, 97 million or so. But it's starting to inch up there. So how much does that impact your business in terms of as more consumers get used to watching live content that's professionally produced, and Sling and AT&T in particular have had some real quality issues for quite some time, which isn't good for all of us. But How does that really impact you guys in terms of how you think of doing live content, not just live sports, but live content moving forward? It's got to help.
Yeah, I mean, I think we view the market as really, really large because it is, and that there's room for everyone. I think in the past, if you go back 20 years or so, there wasn't a lot of room given, but clearly some of the results that we've seen, even though they may seem dramatic, the cord cutting, it is happening to a certain extent. The base is really large. And it's really just started recently, and I don't think we fully know how big a trend it is or how fast it's happening. It's kind of, I've been following it, pretty closely for 10 years, and it kind of goes in and out, and then there's cord nevers. Clearly, the amount of cable subscriptions, if you take that as kind of the proxy for pay TV, has been dropping a little bit, but it hasn't. They've got other businesses too, right? They make a lot of money based on the data from the video that's delivered and the unending consumption that we all have as Americans watching video over the internet as well. We view it as one of the key trends in the industry, and one of the things that we identified early on as an underlying supplier for this is making sure that our customers who may be pay TV operators have the ability to do both, right? So whether it's BT or Sky or Frontier or Astro or DirecTV or Globosat, we give them that ability to converge everything into one platform and eventually into the cloud when they choose to. We talk a lot about the cloud, but we understand that the industry, is in various stages of progression. We think, examples like this actually show the way things will be in the future. It's kind of our vision for where things go, but it doesn't mean that we force it. We meet customers where they are. And maybe they move some applications. It's very common to start to move more back office applications or software updates to the cloud. Maybe not the core infrastructure yet, but it'll happen. 20 years from now, I think we'll be sitting here
Hopefully
going
sooner than that.
Well, it takes a long time, right?
It does.
20
take
years
a lot
went
of time.
quickly, right?
20 years went quickly.
Yeah.
I remember in 2000. For those of you that were around, Quest used to run those commercials on TV. And their slogan was "Ride the Light." And you had the guy who walked into the hotel room in the middle of the desert. They had no air conditioning, no everything. But the woman behind the counter said, "We have every TV movie show ever made on demand." And it was, "How's that possible?" And it was Quest, "Ride the Light." And it was the idea in 2000, which we're kind of only just seeing
Almost
now with
there.
live linear services, kind of in just a little small way. We've got time for one more question. So what I want to ask is, at its root, Amazon is a commerce company. I mean, I think Amazon, I immediately think, what else do I have to buy? Which obviously you guys like. As a Prime member, I obviously buy more products there, as you know, because Prime members tend to buy more products and goods from you. But AWS is such an interesting cloud company now. Run rate of $14 billion this year. The commerce side obviously is doing well, but I don't ever remember there being a time in the market where we've had a company whose core business is commerce that has gotten into the video space and the live streaming space and delivering content to users. So, as we think about Amazon going forward, one, what is that huge advantage you have as a commerce company? But two, how do you really want people to think of Amazon as the brand? Do you still, over time, want it to be thought of as a commerce company or a destination or a content company? Or, how do you sort of put all those different things together? Because you do a lot. Infrastructure, live sports, commerce. What is the vision of what Amazon executives laid out of where they want the business to go?
I'll address it.
Sure.
Because I'm part of an entity that rolls into AWS, that rolls into Amazon. And so I'm able to see, how actually the company itself, I don't think views itself as a commerce company. We view ourselves really as a very customer-focused company. So regardless of what that means, it means transactions and facilitating. In the case of AWS, it means dropping prices, right? So you don't meet a lot of folks in the industry that would say, increase my prices. And yet companies do that, right? So AWS takes the opposite approach. We say, okay, in the last 10 years since we launched AWS, we've dropped prices on various services 62 times. Or we need to be able to be in every region, so we expand in that way. It's really not so much about just commerce, it's about what do customers need and how do we make that experience better for them. That creates commerce, but it all starts with the end customer. Like everything that we do starts, by thinking 2 years from now, what do we want the customer to experience, and what can we build to make that experience better for them?
Yeah, and that's why when we started out this session, I was saying the reason we were looking at the NFL is because it's something that we felt our customers would find compelling. So it kind of, that's how it fits in. So I actually don't look at what we're doing on the video side as being that different from what we do for AWS or Commerce or any of the other areas of Amazon. We're just really laser focused on the customer and trying to figure out what's going to be compelling for them.
Makes sense. I mean, Amazon, as far as I'm concerned, has one of the best customer service reputations in the market. Anything ever goes wrong at any time, man, they are so quick to fix it. Yeah. So quick with follow-up. I mean, if more companies are like that, it seems like it's a lost art these days. Well, thanks everyone for your time. I'd like to thank Jim and Keith. We're going to open the exhibit floor now at 10 o'clock, and at 10:30 we'll start sessions. Thank you.